There's a lot going on in Canada. Not one, two, or three, but there are around 6 to 7 new announcements which is made by the Canadian immigration officers. So today I have a special guest, Shafali, who's a regulated immigration advisor from Canada, who's going to share the latest updates straight from Canada. So without any further delay, let me introduce you guys to Shafali. Hi, Shafali. Welcome back once again to Your Knowledge Buddy.
Thank you so much, Sarika. I always enjoy coming back on your show. It's fun to chat with you.
Thank you. If you don't mind, can you just remind to my audience who you are? Some of my audience already know you, but for my new audience, if you don't mind kind of introducing yourself, please.
Sure. My name is Shefali Kapoor. I'm a licensed Canadian immigration consultant. I am based in Toronto. The name of my business is T. Immigration Services. I've been in business in the immigration industry for almost 6 years now. And yeah, that's about me. I do this whole and soul. My focus is on immigration, Canadian immigration to be precise.
And I think you are the right person to be invited to talk about the recent announcement from the Canada government. So there's so much happening, there's so much in the news. So I would like, if at all, can you summarize all the updates which are happening now for my audience?
Oh, yes, there's just so much going on with Canadian immigration. Sometimes it's so hard for us to keep up as well. So definitely there's a lot going on and I'm happy to share that. I'm going to share my screen because I made a very short presentation for your audience so that they can actually even see paper of what exactly is happening. So if you allow, I'm going to go ahead and share the screen.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, so recent updates and changes in Canadian immigration. Like I said, the name of my business, T. Immigration, and we can be reached at the number provided. Okay, so I know a lot of you actually are thinking what's going on, especially the ones who are, working towards or planning Canadian immigration, or they've been in the express entry pool, or they've been trying something or the other to come to Canada. So you must be thinking what's really going on with Canadian immigration. There are a lot of updates, but sometimes it's hard to get them all in one place. There are some of you who probably in the express entry pool but haven't gotten an invitation in a long time. I also have people who've been in the pool with scores of like 470, 480, still no invitations. I know it's very disappointing for many of you, but have you ever thought what is really going on with Canadian immigration? A lot of people tell me that Canada is Australia 2.0. I don't follow Australian immigration at all because I personally feel Canadian immigration is so vast that I don't have the time to keep up with any other immigration. So I only focus on Canadian immigration. But yeah, a lot of people have been telling me things are happening very similar to how it was in Australia. So what is really happening in Canadian immigration? Like the hot topic right now is express entry and why the scores are so high. Even people with very high scores in express entry have not been able to get invitations. The reason is because express entry, the government of Canada is now focusing on category-based draws. So Canada has determined that there are certain sectors that they really need people in. There's a labor market shortage in certain sectors, and they want high-skilled people from those sectors to come and work in Canada. So how do they bring those people? I mean, if they open up express entry, they cannot bring those people, right? So what they are going to now do is that they are going to invite people through the express entry pool only under the categories that are in high priority in Canada. Okay, now when I say only, doesn't mean that they're not going to focus on any other category. They will, of course, invite general candidates as well, but the priority will be given to people in certain sectors. And what are those sectors? Healthcare. There's a huge shortage of people to work in healthcare in Canada. Also, primarily because healthcare is free in Canada. It's a part of the provincial package, and healthcare is given by the provincial government. So it's very hard. I mean, there are not enough healthcare workers to you in the healthcare industry. Second is the STEM profession. So Canada wants to build its STEM industry, wants to build its IT sector. So they're going to now focus on people. So they're going to bring talent from outside Canada. Trades. there's a huge, I don't know how many of you know about it, but there's a huge shortage of housing in Canada. As a result, the housing market is insane currently. So there's a lot of construction that is expected in the next 2 to 3 years, and hence Canada is focusing on people in the trade sectors, in the construction sectors, who can come and work in Canada in this construction industry, so that Canada can continue on its plans of building more housing in Canada. Transportation, there are very limited occupations in the transport sector, but yes, they've included especially truck drivers, long-haul truck drivers, and this is a very popular knock, especially with people in the Middle Eastern countries, especially a lot of people travel from India and go and work in Middle East as truck drivers. Those people will get benefit because truck drivers are included in this. And then agriculture and agri-food. Of course, we know there's a shortage of farm workers, butchers, people to work in the farming industry in Canada. So of course, they've given priority to people in the agricultural and the agri-food sector to come to Canada. So this is exactly, and of course, people in the French, with French proficiency as well. So French speakers are also will be given preference. So people in the express entry pool with French proficiency will also be sent out invitations to come to Canada on permanent residence. So this is how they're. So we just had our first draw in one of these occupation-based draws. On June 28th, 500 invitations were sent out through express entry to people in the healthcare stream. So there are certain knock codes that have been shortlisted as priority knocks in the healthcare sector. And those occupations were sent out 500 invitations with a cutoff score of 476. So anybody with a cutoff of 476 or higher with at least 6 months of experience in one of those priority knocks in the healthcare sector received an invitation. Then we had another draw focused towards STEM occupations that was sent out on July 5th, 2023. 500 invitations were sent out with a cutoff of 486. And then today, July 6th, we got another draw targeted towards healthcare occupations with a cutoff of 463 as the CRS score. Now, what Canada intends to do is that they intend to bring these people in Canada with a hope that once these people arrive in Canada as permanent residents, they will be able to join these industries, these sectors, and be able to contribute to the labor market shortages that Canada is facing in these sectors. Canada is really big on its IT talent strategy as well right now. On June 27, 2023, our Minister of Immigration, Honorable Sean Fraser, he announced a very, very, very interesting pathway. I don't know, Sarika, if you've heard of this, because I know you follow all these updates a lot, but this is a very, very lucrative offer for H-1B holders in the US. Canada knows that there is a lot of layoffs that's happening in the US, and those people will not be left with an option, the H-1B holders, other than going back home. So they are giving this option to H-1B holders to who have an H-1B visa to apply for an open work permit in Canada. The catch here is that only 10,000 applicants will be eligible for this. This program is only valid for 1 year, and only 10,000, and there's a cap of 10,000. And considering the number of H-1B applicants are in the US at this time and the amount of layoffs that are happening in the US, I suspect this cap to reach by within 72 hours or maybe even less. This program becomes available on July 16th. We still don't have too much updates on the eligibility criteria, if there's any catch there. But as of right now, what we know is that the open work permit stream will be open on July 16th, and there is an upper limit of 10,000 applications. I'm pretty sure this will go like this. And of course, the people who apply for this, their spouses and children will also be eligible to come to Canada on work permits or study permits for the children, depending on their family composition. Canada also is developing the innovation stream under the International Mobility Program to attract highly talented individuals. There are certain I'm not going to go into the specifics of those programs because then we can stay here all day. But there's a specific program called International Mobility Program, which focuses on, bringing talent, high-skilled talent from outside Canada under a lot of agreements, like I'll give you an example, intra-company transfer. It's called ICT. Employer-specific work permits will now be given up to 5 years for workers who are destined to work for a company that is identified by the government of Canada as contributing to their industrial innovation goals. Now, earlier, these work permits were only initially issued for 1 year. They're now going to give it up to 5 years to certain people only who will be working in companies that have been, identified by the government of Canada that are contributing to their innovation goals. And then in-demand occupations, highly skilled workers in in-demand occupations will also be able to get open work permits for 5 years. They are also going to process these applications within 14 days under the Global Skills Strategy. They're introducing a new program, which is called Digital Nomads. Now, it's a new fancy name, but really it's just a visitor visa for people to come, who like to travel, and they can come to Canada as a visitor, and then they can live in Canada and continue working for their employer back home. And at the same time, if they can look around for an employer in Canada, they can ultimately get the job offer from that employer and apply for a work permit while being inside Canada. But the digital nomad term is a fancier name for a visitor visa. So before people get excited, this is a new visa. It's nothing to do with, this is not a new program. It's just a fancy name. People with visitor visas can come to Canada, continue working for the employer back home from here, and they'll be called digital nomads. And they can continue working for employers in Canada if they can get a work permit to work here legally. And then we did talk about the STEM specific draws that were going to happen, but we just had one first draw yesterday. And then there is a startup visa program. I don't know if you ever follow this program. This is a very, very interesting program for people who want to invest in Canada, who want to start a business in Canada, or who want to start a startup in Canada. And this is a direct permanent residence program for those people. This program has gained a lot of popularity in the past couple of years. And so there were some changes that were announced by our minister this year on June 27th. So they've allocated more spots to this program in 2023, with further increases planned for 2024 and 25. Earlier, people who were applying through this program would only get a 1-year work permit, but now they will get a 3-year work permit. Earlier, people would get a closed work permit only for the business that they were going to start in Canada. But now they're going to get an open work permit. So while they will continue working in their business, they can also work outside of their business and, contribute to the labor market shortages of Canada. Earlier, they had the option of the work permit was only available to the essential and the urgently needed partner of the business, because usually this program would comprise a team of 2 to 3 people who would apply together. So only the essential person would get a work permit, but now they've made it available for 3 years for every single member of their entrepreneurial team. And then they're also going to prioritize applications that are supported by venture capital, angel investor groups, business incubators, and have capital committed, along with applications that are supported by business incubators who are members of Canada's tech network. Again, this is not something that we can really control. This is something that, it really depends on when the business is identified and how it's projected to the government, how the business plan is done, what's the business idea. It all depends on that. So I don't think so we can really talk too much about this aspect, but all the other aspects under the startup visa about the work permits are very lucrative. And I think people who are applying under these streams were very excited about these initiatives that are being offered. Now, there are some measures for work permit holders in Canada that the government took. On June 27th, our Honorable Immigration announced that they are going to announce a new temporary measure that will remove the limit on the length of study programs that temporary foreign workers can enroll in without a study permit. Now, what this means in simple words is that foreign workers, so people with work permits in Canada, will now have the opportunity to seek additional training and education that can help them in their careers. This measure will allow foreign workers expand their future job prospects and increase their opportunities to transition to permanent residence. Now, what used to happen before this change was that foreign workers in Canada, so anybody in Canada who had a work permit or a visitor visa, they could study in Canada without a study permit, but the duration of program could only be less than 6 months.
Right.
So on June 27th, our minister changed that, and he said that starting now, applicants will, so people with work permits in Canada do not need a study permit to study alongside. They will be able to study without a study permit, regardless of the duration of the program. Even if the program is like, let's say 3 years, and they have a work permit for 3 years, they can study for that entire duration alongside their work permit. Let's assume their work permit is valid for 2 years, but the program is 3 years. So they can study for 2 years without a study permit. And for the remaining duration of the program, they can apply for a study permit.
Right. Good. This is nice.
So now, how is this going to benefit people here? So, sometimes people come here without education, but they get a job offer and they work in Canada. But then they can't become eligible for PR because they don't get enough points, right? So the government says, okay, while you're working, you can also study, and then we'll give you points for education later. Right? So that's a great measure that they took. It's a temporary measure. It's a 3-year policy. So for the next 3 years, people can actually study full-time or part-time while their work permits are valid, or until the expiration of the policy, with no restrictions on the length of the program. This became a very, very, very popular, like people were really excited about this policy. And when we talk about this policy, we're not only talking about people who are applying through express entry. I'm going to give you an example. Caregivers. Their requirement for caregivers is to apply for PR is that you need 2 years of experience and that in Canada, and you also need 1 year of post-secondary education. A lot of caregivers don't have that. People who come to take care of young children, they don't have that. So what they can do is, while they're doing their caregiver job, they can also alongside, they can work for 1 year, study for 1 year, and then ultimately after 2 years, they become eligible for PR.
Correct.
So similarly, farm workers, or let's say, farm workers. Sometimes farm workers don't have that education requirement, but they need high school. So at least they can come here, work, and alongside do their high school or whatever they need to do to ultimately apply for PR.
Yeah, in this way, UK is different because UK doesn't look at your degree. Even though you are just 12 pass, you can still get your skill visa based on
Canada it's a point-based system, right? I mean, the higher educated you are, the better points you get.
Yeah, okay. UK doesn't have the similar kind of pattern.
Yeah. This is a big one. Eligible travelers from 13 more countries will now qualify for visa-free travel to Canada. On June 6th, our minister announced that they're adding 13 countries to the list of ETA program. Who are those 13 countries? Very interesting. Antigua and Barbuda. I've put the list of the countries below: Argentina, Costa Rica, Morocco, Seychelles, Panama, Uruguay, Philippines, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and Grenadines. I can never pronounce that correctly. Thailand, Trinidad and Tobago. Now, what is the catch in this? Initially, when this policy came out, everybody was like, okay, now these people can, especially people from the Philippines, they try to come here and, get jobs as caregivers and healthcare workers. But everybody was excited, but there was a catch. And what was the catch? Travelers from these countries who either held a Canadian visa in the last 10 years or who currently hold a US non-immigrant visa can only apply for an ETA. So it's not that anybody can get up from these countries and come. So they did add that catch. All right, going on to the next one. I don't know if you're aware of this, but this has been a very popular one for Canada. The Canada-Ukraine authorization emergency travel. Since that Russia's invasion of Ukraine, Ukrainians have been benefited with an open work permit option for themselves and their family members. This particular emergency travel authorization has been extended until July 15, 2023. Ukrainians and their family members are still, until July 15th, are able to apply for an authorization like a travel, emergency travel, free of charge.
Yeah.
Anybody holding this particular visa will also have until March 31st, 2024 to travel to Canada. They can even travel until March 31st. And then people who are already here in Canada on one of this authorization, they have also until March 31st to extend their temporary residence stay. So this was also a very big one, and a lot of Ukrainians have been able to travel to Canada based on this particular emergency travel authorization. Family reunification measures to meet labor market shortages. So our minister also announced new measures to strengthen family reunification. Family reunification is a very strong pillar of Canadian immigration. And that comes under the sponsorship program, like the family sponsorship. You can sponsor your children, your parents, your spouses, your common law partners, your conjugal partners. So what are the changes that they're bringing? That anybody who has applied for a spousal sponsorship from outside Canada, their spouses will now be eligible for a faster visitor visa processing. So their visitor visa will now be processed within 30 days if they have a pending permanent residence application that is to be finalized.
Right.
They also made spousal open work permits eligible for these applicants. So if somebody's applied for a permanent residence in Canada from outside Canada under family sponsorship, then they can now come to Canada on visitor visas. And then when they are inside Canada, they can apply for a work permit as well. This option was not there earlier.
Yeah.
And then people who are already inside Canada on open work permits, Canada has given them an option to extend their work permits for additional 18 months, as long as their work permits are expiring sometime this year until end of August of 2023.
Okay.
And then, yeah, those are the major updates. That's it.
That was quite a lot. Yeah, I think my mind is already blowing. I don't know if I.
And every day we get something new, and I'm like, oh my God, how are we even going to process this? But
Yeah. Oh my God, it's mental. Thank you very much, Shafali, for covering this. So, guys, if you're watching this video and if you are in the process to migrate to Canada in coming days or weeks or even months, if at all you have any question, you can reach out to Shafali. Her details will be in the pinned comment and in my video description as well. And Shafali, thank you very much for coming and spending your time and sharing the latest updates from Canada. Thank you very much.
thank you again for having me on your show.
Thank you. Bye.